This is Inclusive Insights, the podcast that unites parents of unique children,
where guests share their vulnerable stories of heartbreak and their stories of hope.
We're your hosts. I'm Nancy.
And I'm Michelle. And we're here to provide tangible support and connect parents with practical next steps.
And I'm here for the comic relief.
So this afternoon, we have Brian Krause with us. He is a licensed mental health counselor, and he works with Rhythms Coaching and with Providence Counseling Center. And to just really quick, tell us a little bit about what is your specialty. I know you may not love that word, but like what, who do you love working with? Who have you found is like your niche?
Generally people.
Okay,
people.
Well, the human race is
yes,
okay.
The human race. But within the human race, I think that most issues or most challenges are relational. So I work with a lot of couples.
So humans with relationships.
Yeah.
Any
Nice.
human who
Nice.
has any kind of relationship.
I have a relationship with my dog, though, so I don't know.
Yeah, that might work, right? It might work, yeah. So relational issues. So whether it's parent-child or whether it's a child separating from a parent for the first time in life, trying to learn how to grow up, or just navigating different life challenges. A lot of times those come down to the relationships or lack thereof in somebody's life. And so I kind of focus in on that. About half my work is working with couples, trying to figure each other out, trying to understand, hey, what's the dynamics between them that create the system that they now have, both within themselves, their families, and from extension there, the communities they're in.
Yeah. So that could be multi-layered when you bring an entire family into the picture, because now it's, it's not just marriage, it's a mom, a dad, a child, and a marriage and siblings, and then everything else life throws at you.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting when you work with one person, you kind of get a view of a family and the person, the relationships, the marriage. And then I have the privilege a lot of times of working with both the husband and the wife, and you get totally different perspectives. You blend those together, and then there's a couple of other times where they're so excited about the growth that they're making that they then bring in their kids, a lot of times adult kids even. And so all of a sudden you get all three dynamics, and it's just really interesting to see all that come together.
So I think a common human experience is transition. There's transitions from that honeymoon period. There's transitions, like when you're first married, or when you have maybe a parent passing, or you move. Life is full of transitions. And I think one of the transitions that can be hardest on families is transitioning from having a child, going from childhood to finding their way as an independent adult or as an independent young adult.
Yeah.
And how there's so many things that can play into that. Is that something you've come across and with your clients and in your practice?
Yeah, quite often it's comes at different ages, whether it's with teens or whether it's with young adults, 20s, and sometimes even 30s, right? Where people just, whatever the dynamic was in the family, culture, there's a lot of shifts in culture, generational changes. It's always interesting to see when the next generation comes up and they say, oh, the old generations aren't this, and then it's their turn to be the old generation, and the new younger generations.
The newest, greatest thing.
Yeah, so all of these constant shifts and challenges that happen, and having people try to figure out to navigate that it can be really difficult.
Yeah. So the families that we work with, a lot of times that transition, if it comes at all, right, a lot of times that transition can come later on in life. And I know last time we kind of talked about, marriage and how having a unique abilities child or anything that's differentiated from a typical experience, how do you navigate those things? And when you're looking at a child who's going from young adulthood to adulthood, let's say they're 30 years old and they're ready to make a life for themselves. At some point, a parent has to say, this was the dream that I had for my child. This was the hope that I had for my child. We all do that. We all say, they're going to grow up to be whatever they want to be, but it's going to be great and it's going to be theirs and it's going to be. But what if it's not theirs? What if it's very much you think that it's also yours? Like, what if that moment never comes? What happens?
I think the first thing to do is to kind of normalize that experience across all parents before we get to the unique abilities portion.
Right.
Somehow within our culture, our society, one of the shifts that happened culturally, I don't know, it was 80s, 90s, whatever, 2000s, whatever it was, is that parents began to own more and more of their children's future and the goals and dreams and what dreams did I have for my child. And they would say often, oh, I want them to be this or that, or encourage them to be whatever they want it to be. But they had secret hopes and desires. And as a parent of 2 older young adult children, I can connect with that and say,
you had hopes and dreams for your children.
Yeah, you have different things that visions like that you looked at and said, oh, I think it's going to go like this or go like that. You hold those loosely, but at the same point in time, even though you're holding those loosely, there is this piece where it comes out different and you're watching with bated breath. Oh, is this going to happen this way? Is that going to happen that way? And you want for them naturally to have things maybe that you had to struggle for that you didn't have, right? You want them to be able to have those things. And so I think it's a universal experience for parents that want more for their kids or something for their kids that was within their experience, their conception, their ideas. We bring that back to unique abilities, right? And so it changes a lot, right? There's a lot of different pieces, different capabilities, different things that happen, right? That they may not be able to get to maybe the hopes and dreams of the parent. One of the things that I think is important to realize that the hopes and dreams are ours as parents. They really reflect our heart. They really reflect what we see as norm, what we see as successful, what we see as what we want. Just to kind of bring it back to the culture more broadly for a moment, it's interesting to see the almost anti-materialism, anti-money, anti-things that are happening in the younger generations right now. Oh, yeah. And it took me a while to wrap my head around it, right? So if I could, for a personal example, my son's 24, he's getting ready to get his first apartment. He's excited and just kind of, hey, could I help? Could I maybe, get you a table to put food on? And he's like, no, we're going to go thrifting. Well, I mean, I could. We could go.
This is available to you. Right?
Yeah,
this is something I wish I had at your age.
Right. And he is like, no. We go back and forth, and he knows I mean well, and we'll come to some agreement. But I'm not going to be able to do all the things that I want to do for him. But it's because I want to do it. What I really want is what he wants in life. And just support that. But that could be difficult because of what I want.
And how do you receive that in the moment when he says, no, that's okay? I mean, for a moment, does it make you like stop and be like, but wait?
Well, so that's a great question, because one of the things that I had to do is reflect, and I actually reflected with him not too long ago. Hey, when I was first starting out as a young person, I had family members that were able to say, hey, we want to offer this, and not be pushy, just offer, and we could accept or reject. And it was a great help, a great feeling for them and for us. And I wanted to be able to do that for you, just as a passing down, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the challenges for him is like, yeah, I get that. And there's time where we'll accept that, but not in this, right?
I love that he has the liberty, though, that he feels the liberty to say that to you.
Yeah, to have those conversations.
Right, yeah.
To be able to be open to the conversations, kind of thing. It's that transitional piece there. I tell parents that they're with an 18, 19, 20-year-old child, and I'll say, one of the greatest conversations that you can gift your children in that moment is to just kind of come out of yourself and just have the I hate you conversation. What does that mean, right?
I hate you conversation.
Right. What does that mean? Because I need that. I have 18 and 20 right now. So
to sit down and say, listen, I did my best, but I really messed up in a lot thes. I don't even know how I messed up.
Oh, as a parent.
As a parent. Yes. There are times I did things, I thought about things, some days, but I thought about things and I thought I approached a situation and they saw it totally different.
Right.
And so to sit down with my oldest daughter and my son and to say, okay, tell me, like, what was your experience? And them to come back and say, well, when you did this or when this happened, or things that I thought I messed up, they thought I did great on, right? Just to be able to have here's all the ways you messed up, and to be able to have that connection of healing and moving forward and creating an open conversation with them.
I hear a lot of times, right? There's been, it's a joke almost, right? It'd be like, oh yeah, well I'm going to therapy, and and then mom hears that their kid is going to therapy, and
like, what did I
guess,
do?
it's all my fault. Let me guess, I ruined your life. How did I mess you up this time? Or the parents who are like, yeah, forget a college fund. I'm setting aside money for their therapy later on in life because I know that. So I think there is kind of the stigma of like, hey, parents, it's all your fault, but what a wonderful gift to give your kids to say, yeah, okay, a lot of it is, or it isn't, or whatever, but let's talk about it. Like, let's lay it out there and have that discussion. Are you looking to fix those things in that moment?
No, I'm not looking to change. I'm looking to bring awareness and start the conversation, right? Because it's something that we need. I imagine this, a lot of different analogies, but a particular analogy here for Orlando, downtown, we have a lot of cobble streets, right?
Oh, yeah.
And brick streets and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, potholes and all kinds of things. And as you're driving, right, your car's going to do some things and need some things.
Lose its alignment completely.
So you're going to take it to the dealership, right? Or you're going to take it to the car repair, and you're going to put it on the machine, and they're going to realign the tires, and going to say, oh, man, this is the second time in 3 months. What's going on? Well, I drive in Orlando. And they're going to, okay. They have awareness. Now, what does that mean? Are the streets bad? No, the streets aren't, but they are what they are.
Exactly.
As parents, we come with our own history, with our own stories, our own stresses and whatnot. And it's okay that we have those. Did we act the best in every situation? No, we did not. But this is who we are. This is what we are. And in the middle of that, there's this understanding, this awareness that they now have. Oh, I am who I am, and I'm going to be making some of those same things. I can't always, I can continue to work on myself and make myself different, better, change, whatever. But at the same point in time, what I can do is bring this understanding that, hey, we are all in this same boat. I'm not here to blame your parents or me and my kid's situation, right? But I'm not here to blame the parent. I'm here to say, hey, this is the construct in which you were formed and framed. Know this about yourself so that you can have awareness to how you respond to the world around you.
What a way to model cutting through that shame. Because if you can sit with them and you can take the burden on your shoulders of, I'm opening up the door for you to tell me everything that I've done wrong, everything that that you're still carrying for one reason or another. And I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to back away. I'm not going to dispute it. I'm not going to tell you that your experience was wrong, but I am also not going to feel shame. I am also not going to feel, there might be moments of regret, right? There might be moments of personal growth.
Absolutely.
But what a great way to model. I'm facing the hard things and I'm not completely collapsing under this burden of shame.
Yeah.
I'm taking it in stride. And yes, it's a conversation about, hey, here's childhood, here's life experiences. But I think the actual thing that's happening is them getting to see you model. This is how you approach the hard things in life without debilitating shame.
Yeah.
And find some personal growth in that.
Well, one of the things that's important to know is I mentioned, hey, 18, 19, 20, have this conversation, but it's certainly not the first conversation that's had. In other words, sat down with them consistently and modeled, right? Hey, at age appropriate times. So have my 9-year-old in the house. And so it's sitting down and saying, oh, I got that wrong. I messed that up, and modeling that so that when we get to that later conversation, there's all of this awareness like, oh, this is just an extension of the normal conversation that we have. So let me bring that back down to unique abilities, right? Depending on what level of functioning that you are, we're all human. We all have this experience.
Even parents.
Yeah. Parents, right? Children of all different abilities and origins and whatnot. We all have that same experience, right? Of we've been wronged. We haven't been able to share it with somebody. We haven't been able to have our story witnessed, right?
Or processed.
Yeah. And so to be able as parents to provide that for your kids is super important. Now, if you're in a world where your children is treated differently or treated other than what would be the normative cultural pieces, there may be some other pieces there that are really strong that come up for them that maybe we think is normal. Maybe we think is automatic because we can't always see our own stuff in our own place, right?
Yeah.
Like we think our experience is how everybody thinks, right?
Right.
But to be able to have those conversations, say, hey, how did that feel when this happened to you? How did that feel when somebody said that or did this or treated you in this way? How did that feel? That this experience was, how did it feel when I said this or did that, right? Did I overparent you in ways that they can understand? And I firmly believe that if I can do that with any age, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old child that doesn't have neurodivergence, right? That I can do that with a child at any level of functioning. We all have this internal sense of awareness that needs to be attended to.
Right. Have you always had this perspective on, I mean, have you always parented like this? Have you always had this view of how to interact with that parent-child relationship?
We all grow, we all change, we all move. But by and large, the answer is yes.
That yes sounded like it had a question mark.
Well,
at
because,
the end.
right? Because I'm trying to be reflective. Did I? Right? Because,
still
I'm just saying my
evolving.
son's 24. So I remember when he was 6, right? 18 years ago.
Right.
And he come home from kindergarten and gotten in trouble. And he got this little red ticket, right? And so,
Ooh,
devastating.
red ticket.
yeah,
Right.
and so it was
Mm.
one of those things that he was ashamed about, didn't want to tell me about. And so, of course, come to find out the knowledge anyway. And so I just picked up his book bag and I was just going through, oh, look at your homework. Oh, well, that's crazy. What's this?
And you already knew.
Yeah, I knew what it was, right? And I was like, oh, what's this? And he goes, I don't. And he got all shameful and crying. And I said, oh, buddy, right? Like, just tell me what this is, right? And he eventually tells me, I said, oh, well, everybody makes mistakes. This is just a mistake. And I tore up the red ticket and I said, we're good. Don't even worry about it, right? And he was afraid he was going to get punished. Well, why would you get punished? You're going to
ground him?
Yeah,
You're going to
this was-
send him to his room?
Right, the red ticket was his punishment.
That was
right?
you finding that was the punishment.
Right,
Right.
exactly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he's
So-
probably already punishing himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, he comes home from school and he opens his book bag, goes, look, Dad, I got a red ticket. Tears it up and says, it's all good. I'm like, okay.
Well, hold on.
Pull it back in a little
But
bit.
it's an
We might
example
need
of-
to expand this a little bit. Yeah.
Right. Well, the thing that I'd like to say is when you talk to your kids, when you are connecting with your kids, are you talking down to them? Are you talking like if I were to take the conversation and I were to take your child away and put an adult in their place,
Right.
would you speak the same way?
That's a great. That is.
And if the answer is no, you're not treating
There's a
your child
problem.
as human. You're treating your child as less than.
So this, I think, was a pivotal moment. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but this was a pivotal moment for me because, as co-parents, as partners in life, you and I think that there is a huge gap in our age range. We have
Wait,
9.
you guys co-parent? Oh, you
Yeah,
do know
we're-
each other
yeah,
already.
we are married.
Forgot.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
We have 9 and we have 24, 25.
Mm-hmm.
So, I did not always parent the way that I parent now,
Okay.
even with those very few years of parenting. There was a moment of realization for me where it was, she does not belong to you. You are responsible for her.
I love that.
You have a God-given, ordained, like in this life,
Right.
there's really only one job that is ordained divinely, and that is to foster this life that's been put into my hands.
I thought it was that you were going to cook for me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well,
Yeah, we're ordering takeout tonight.
by the way,
um,
gonna need your credit card.
and so that moment, I'll never forget. And there was a whole lead up of events that brought us to that moment, but I'll never forget like sitting in that moment and thinking, oh my, she's not mine. This is not my human. There's a responsibility from God, but it's to foster, it's to guide. It's not to punish or to mold in a very strict and direct way. This is her journey. This is her life. And I'll say to her a lot, I'm so lucky that I get to be your mom. And I say that for her, but I also say it for me.
Right.
Because I have to remind myself, I'm here for the journey.
Mm-hmm.
I am in the sidecar, right? She is the one that's going to be living this life. And I'll never forget the moment that kind of perspective shifted and changed. And then to come alongside a co-parent who also had that perspective. And then I remember you modeling that for me. Like, it's one thing to realize. And then it's another thing to see, okay, but what does that look like from day to day? How do you parent respectfully?
Right.
How do you parent in a way that honors their humanity, their journey, their future? And so how do you
My
do
picture
that?
in my mind is a bowling alley, and we're the bumpers,
Mm.
you know, and the ball is going
that's
down,
great.
and we're just like,
Yeah.
oh, yep. I don't have to dramatically tell you no.
Yeah.
There's no loud
But
siren.
let me just say,
"Meh."
like, maybe you want to
Right.
scoot back over here in the middle
There's
to
a-
make it to the end.
Yeah, there's a model similar to that like in the counseling world that I have adopted. And so I know it came from somewhere else, but I'm going to call it my own. So it's called...
We're patenting today. so-
yes, exactly. The parent, coach, advise, right? So
Okay.
at
Yeah.
some level, they're a
Yeah.
parent, right? So you have to give a lot of direction, a lot of instruction. Do this, do that, don't do this.
Is
right?
there an age range for that? Or
Well, it's going to vary, but think about it in terms, like if you think about it in terms of grade school,
Mhm.
right? A lot of times, again, for neuronormative, right? You're going to be looking at second, third grade, right? Notice that by the time your child's going into fourth grade, there's a great amount of independence. You're not really
Second
checking.
is huge. Then they pole vault into, yeah.
Right. And so there's a lot of direction. So you go into kindergarten, they're teaching you every day, go to your cubby, do this, every day, do that, right? And there's a constant check on those things. And then you go to first grade and the second grade. And each time they're adding a new skill because they're teaching independence. By the time you go to fourth grade, I remember our daughter's in third grade, right? So last year, first grade, second grade, kindergarten. I mean, the stack of papers that would come home, right?
the checklists
Right.
and the
Right.
yes.
Oh my
yes.
goodness, we'd have boxes of this paper because, like,
Boxes.
what do you do with it? Right? Because she wants to check on it until she forgets it, and then we can toss it. But nonetheless, it's all of this paper, right? And so every quarter we get a big stack, and we got through all of third grade with maybe this much paper the whole time.
Amazing.
Right.
Because they were doing all this stuff themselves. Right. So that's
Right.
that parent part. The coach part says, I've taught you everything you need to know.
The basics.
Right? All the basics
Yeah.
are there. The coach is, when you swing that bat and the ball doesn't go quite where you want it to go, or you miss the ball, hey, let's talk about it. What happened with your swing? What happened?
Right.
I'm teaching you how to be introspective and to evaluate yourself.
So let's break that down really quick, because I think the nuance there for parents, I had to have a very directive, right? Understanding of this. It's questions. It is not directives from the top down. It's inquisitive questions. So the thing that you just described is like the coaching is more of, let's be introspective. Like,
yeah.
so give us a little more example of that. Like what kind of questions?
I mean, there's different questions to ask, right? So in other words, there's times when we ask questions that aren't questions, they're leading, right? And
I think what you meant was.
Yeah. And children know, like, are you sure that's the thing that you wanted to do?
Right.
And they're like, okay, whatever.
I'm pretty sure you were really going to.
Yeah. And so those are directive questions, still in the parenting. And notice that even with our 9-year-old, right, almost 10, that when she receives those questions, she immediately, she has a lot of independence, and she's a little sassy at times. So she'll jump back and say,
She's an old soul.
yes, she'll say, hey, if you want to just tell me something, tell me. Right. I'll
Yes,
do
she
it.
will.
And she'll
love
she'll
that.
do it.
And I'm glad she has the freedom, right, to be able to say that. And it's not talking back. And
I
it's
was
not
just going to say that.
disrespect.
And not disrespect.
And
It's who she is.
It's not a
Right.
reflection of our relationship.
No.
I mean, in a negative way. In a positive way, she feels comfortable challenging me,
Right.
as she should.
Yes.
But yeah, sorry, we took a side
in a
note.
respectful way. In other words, is the conversation so the question is, what's respectful? Again, put her here, right? Make her an adult. And have another adult, imagine another adult. Is the conversation something that two adults would have?
Right.
And if it is, then the challenge is not disrespectful. It's a human challenge.
Self-advocacy.
Right. Self-advocacy. So the coaching part is the part that says, well, what do you think? Do you need help? Do you want to evaluate that? Want me to ask questions? And then asking questions.
More
help them.
open-ended.
Yeah, more
okay.
open-ended, right?
Yeah.
The advise part happens where it's now the 20s, right? It starts in the teens, but the advise part, right? Especially as 15, 16, sometimes 14, depending on the child, right? Or earlier. At that point in time, you've taught them everything they're ever going to learn, right? And at that point in time, it's like, all right, I'm here, I'm watching, go ahead. I will respond only if you invite me into the conversation. Right. And in inviting me into the conversation isn't complaining, oh, my homework, oh, I failed that test. That's not inviting me into the conversation. Right. That's saying, I keep failing my tests. Do you know why?
Input.
Right. Now that is inviting me into the conversation. Now I'm invited to advise, right? When we go to our friends, sometimes we just complain. We need a place to vent.
Right.
And sometimes we're like, this keeps happening. Do you have any insight? We're looking for advice from our friends, right?
So you're giving her space to vent without fixing it. I know as a female, how many times we just want to talk about it. Like, don't fix this for me.
I think I give you a lot of unsolicited.
Yeah.
So sorry.
But you're giving her space to kind of vent, but allowing her the respect to say, when you're ready to invite me into the solution, if at all, that's going to be your choice.
Yes.
I'm not going to push that on you.
I always have an opinion. It may not be right. It may not be the opinion that works for you. I always have an opinion. So if you invite me in, I'm glad to poke around and with you and give you some advice. But I'm not arrogant enough to think that my opinion's always right and you should do it my way.
Right.
So yes. So anyway, I just let that be. So it's that parent coach advise. Now the question is, well, how does that work? Again, back with unique abilities, right? How does that work in the unique abilities world? Again, it's going to depend on function, right? For the large part of us, right? There are some cases that may be individually different or unique, right? But for the large part of us, this model still exists. Why do I say that? I say that because our children are going to outlive us. It just is, right? So it's just a part of the chronology of life. Does it always happen that way? No. Whether it's neurodivergent or neurotypical, it doesn't matter, right? It's just most of the time, their children are going to outlive us. So they need to get to that place. Well, what if they have this particular unique ability? Or what if they're challenged in this area? It may be nonverbal or something, right? The answer is, okay, well, I can start to allow myself to find these tiny gains, right? These little bits of gains, if you will, right? I don't want to give a specific example, right? Just because it's going to be unique to each person. But the thing to invite yourself into as the question, right, as a parent of a unique abilities child is, okay, I assume their functioning is this and this is where it's going to be. Right. Okay. Yes, going back to the grieving, I'm grieving that it's not going to be my dreams, but they have their own abilities and own dreams, right? What if it's later they're going to be in a group home? Well, I can't see how they'll ever do that. How do you know?
Exactly.
Right? They've got to be somewhere at some point. People constantly amaze me and astound me, both positively and negatively. I've had couples walk into the room and they sit down and I'm like, there's not much difficulty here. What's going on? And there's
Why
like, they're like, well, we're getting a divorce. Oh, okay. How can I help you? Right. But then I come other couples and they fight like through this, like back and forth for 2, sometimes 3 years. I've had couples stay that long. And I'm like, oh, are they ever going to make it? But all of a sudden something hits, something clicks, everything works and it's just wonderful. Right. And so I can be amazed in that. I'm amazed at kids too. I was working with a number of years back, a gentleman, he was mid-20s, right? And here he was 28 and we're like, okay, hey, let's get our first job. Now, yes, right? Get our first job. 28, wow. Right? Living with mom and dad, still, doing what he can. But he had a lot of stuff to work through. And we got to the place of, let's look at our first job. As we look through our first job, I remember looking at him and saying, hey, listen, I don't care what your first job is.
Right.
It's just a first job.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so he's going to get a job as a grocery clerk. Oh my goodness. The amount of sweat that came off him just trying to get to the interview of a grocery clerk. Now, you and I know they're going to call him. Can you lift boxes? Great. Be here tomorrow at 8. Right?
Exactly.
Like, yeah, that's kind of right.
Yeah. But for him.
Yes, for him, it was like he came back and processed the phone call with me and like all the different pieces. Then it was like, how do I open a checking account? And so there's some, client advocacy, their community advocacy with him. But I told him, I said, I promise you, I know that they're working you 10 to 15 hours a week right now. And it seems like the world is ending at those things. You get the end of 5 hours and it is like
You're dead.
Yeah.
right? And so it's like, I get that, right? But here's what you're learning. You're learning the skill of getting up when you don't want to. That's it. The only thing you're learning. You're not learning how to stack oranges. You're not learning how. The only skill you need to learn right now is the skill of how to get up when you don't want to. And it doesn't matter where you are in life. Sometimes we forget those skills. I was thinking about forgetting that skill this morning. But
my husband just asked me yesterday, when do we have to start setting all those alarms again?
Oh,
Summer's almost
right?
over. And
And so a lot of times we think, oh, what's the skill that you're going to learn in your job? I want to bring it back to the mental skill. The skill is, what are you learning? Now, I look for people's growth. Like one of the things that I do within a counseling process is to go back with people that have been in counseling for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months kind of thing. And I say, okay, now let's look at the situation you just brought up. How would it have been handled 3 months ago? How would it have been handled 6 months ago? And all of a sudden there's this realization, because we think how we are right now is how we've always been. Right. And no, we haven't always been that. Right?
A million times.
Yes, we've forgotten all that old stuff, right? And so they look back, oh my goodness, oh wow. And all of a sudden that realization. I would encourage parents of kids of any ability, any age, to look back and say, where's the growth? And I want to look for it in the micro places, right? A lot of times people think growth is
come up so many times. I feel like today, like that's right. Celebrating the little, those are huge. The little is really
the little successes are huge.
People sometimes think growth in arithmetic terms,
like a linear,
this linear thing. Like, hey, we're just going to be this line of
just
growth,
always going up,
right? But if you were to go back and look, maybe a stock market curve, right, over since the 1920s or whatever till now, it's like this. The term mathematically is logarithm, right? It kind of slopes in this little thing because 100% of one is 1, 100% of. I mean, doubling 1 is 2, and doubling 2 is 4, right? That's 100% growth. Right. I'm still not getting growth of 100, right? Because I wasn't at 50 in doubling. Right. And so the question is, what am I growing? And there's a point, there's an inflection point, and it happens in counseling, it happens with parenting, it happens in our own lives. There's an inflection point where change has built up, and enough of these little mental skills that we're learning, right, have built up that all of a sudden they all come together and it just explodes. And you get that big jump.
And in the moment, you're like, well, it just clicked.
Right.
It just clicked, but it's actually been an entire journey of these little tiny, and I think
you were building it, you had no idea.
As parents and as educators, and we kind of want to look for this. We want the tenacity before the grit. Like we want the full on advocacy and self-advocacy and like they're just going to go and succeed. But a lot of times we need those daily micro successes to build that grit that will one day turn into a click, right?
Yeah.
That is
and
acknowledged.
The click will stay on too.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and that term grit is really important because ultimately that's what we're looking for is resilience.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think in Christian terms, right, we call that perseverance, right? So perseverance is that growth pattern. If you go to 1 Peter chapter 3, Peter offers a model of growth, right, which is we start with some basic idea of what the guidelines are. He calls them moral virtue. We start with this, and then we add to that knowledge, some understanding. Then knowledge gives us the ability to persevere, right, or to kind of stick with it and because this is what's happening, I can stick with it a little bit more, right? As we begin to persevere, he's got this 8-step plan, and that's step 3, right? Because we need these building blocks to be able to get to this overcoming, this excelling life within the context of the Christian faith. That's a model for life. That's a model for parenting. That's a model for growth in any of us, right? And so the question of how do we build grit? And the only way to build it is to go through it.
I mean, it's interesting because I think in any human experience, we kind of, and I know even being clinically trained, even being professional educator, there's this thing that's always intangible, like the X factor, where it's like you have those kids that just walk in confidence. And you're like, man, they were imparted that by angels on their day of birth, and it just happened, right? Even being clinically trained, I was like, well, there's just some stuff you can't teach.
Exactly.
There's just some stuff that you just can't teach. And so when you look at grit, a lot of times you take grit and you put it right up next to confidence. And you're like, oh, well, of course they can have grit. They have confidence. Well, confidence is not something you can teach. You just can't teach confidence. But I have learned that actually you can.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's imparting. It's a modeling. And it starts all the way back at day one. Because if you don't give someone a chance to fail, then they can never take the responsibility of succeeding.
Right.
I'm going to say that again. Right. If you never give someone the chance to fail, then they never own the responsibility of succeeding.
That was going to be a question that I had for you was that the failures, you know, how do you, the parents, the 28-year-old, you know, how do you get into them that failure is okay and failure is part of the path that's before you?
Well, a great question.
Get back up.
in a counseling context, right? The way that I do that is I walk with them through the failure. So many times people have failed, right? And then they get judgment, right? Take this 28-year-old man, right? Anytime he would fail, right? The parents would be like, well-meaning, like, oh, this is what happened. This is what happened. And so, you know, he would walk into the office, sit down. Well, this is happening. Oh, that's amazing. What do you mean it's amazing? I messed up. But you talked to somebody. That's amazing. Right. Think about what it took to get that, right? Yep. And so just celebrate the failures. People, couples come in, right? And the first couple of sessions, well, what's our homework? Well, go home and fight like you always do because we need material for next week. I mean, come on, guys.
I have something to work with.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And so they'll come in and, you know, I remember it was a couple, they got in a fight over a garage door, but the fights are never about stuff.
Of course, right? Of course,
it's always something underneath, right?
But those great triggers that can
pole
vault you into.
I'll come in with them and they'll tell me the story. I said, okay, we're going to call this the Great Garage Door Incident of 22, and we'll celebrate and we'll make, you know, I'll say, if you put this in a TV sitcom, amazing how funny this would be, right? And it just takes
pull yourself out.
Externalize it, right? So it's modeling that again and again.
Do they laugh at it? Are they able to look at it?
Eventually, sometimes not always, but eventually they're able to laugh at that, right? And what I want to do is I want to externalize that and model that again and again and again and again until they're okay with failure. The first lesson of failure is not getting back up; it's falling. Right. If you go to ski school, right? I remember when I took ski lessons
last year.
No,
Sorry, just kidding.
Years ago, right? I took ski lessons many years ago, and the first thing they did is they put us on the skis. Okay, we're going to teach you how to fall. I'm like, what? I already know how to do that. No,
I'm really good at that.
Right, exactly. No, the way that you're not going to hurt yourself.
Exactly.
You're not going to teach me how to get up.
Oh, well, they teach that too, but you got to learn
how
to fall.
But first, you're going to fall.
Right. Because when you say that, we're going to teach you how to fall, automatically your brain goes to, they're going to teach me how to fall so I can get back up again.
No, you've got to learn how to fall properly. So if you feel yourself going down, there's a way in which you're going to move your feet and your legs so that you got a better chance of survival, I guess.
Right. Teach you how to fail.
Not breaking. Yes, teaching that.
It's like mind-blowing, right? It's mind-blowing because if you don't learn the coping mechanisms that go along with the failure, failure is inevitable.
Yes. Our 9-year-old daughter, right? When the first thing that she had to learn, she's pretty good at it now. Ooh. But even a year ago, it's 2 years ago, it was still difficult. If she had dropped a bowl of something, dropped a glass and oh my goodness, I was just looking, I was like, huh. That's fun. And it would just normalize it over and over again. And there was a couple of times where I would.
Yeah, this is going to take 4 paper towels.
There's a couple of times where I would, maybe make a mistake myself. I'm like, oh, well, that stinks. Okay. And just model that with her like it's okay.
You just took it in stride. So you didn't give it a bunch of attention. You didn't give it a huge solution or talking about it.
I didn't even run to clean it up.
You didn't even give it a huge solution.
There's still a spill on our floor right now?
Probably is. No, I didn't run to clean it up.
There.
I cleaned it up. I'm like, we'll get that. Let's finish watching this first and then we'll get it, right?
That probably blew her mind.
Well, that blew my mind because I'm sitting there and I'm like,
how long will the milk sit there?
We've got to clean it up. We've got to.
Right.
Because again, my life experience is completely different. And I'm like, but wait, we're allowed to do that? We're allowed to just let it sit and give space?
What's the worst going to happen? We got a little area rug in the living room and the area rug might get stained. Whatever. You just go buy another one.
Go buy a new one.
Right. It's like, it's not a big deal. Oh, glass? Oh, whatever. We break a lot of those. All right. So, and that's just in our fight. No, I'm just teasing. But modeling that is like how to fail, right? Like it's okay to fail. It's like, oh, that works. Okay.
Sorry, I do want to interrupt here because a secondary point there was you are worth more than this glass.
Right.
You
I love that.
are worth more than this carpet.
Right.
And I didn't even realize that was happening. But, like we're going to upset everything because of the carpet. Who cares about the carpet?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You are worth more than all of that. I'm not going to get emotional about something that's pointless. Right.
And something you hear all the time is your reaction is what sets the tone, right? For the whole, your reaction. And your reaction is like, okay, in a minute.
Right.
I mean, anyone would just, maybe, is it a woman thing? Like, I would just lose my mind.
No,
but
I
it
think
makes so much sense. It's really super simple.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be cultural. It could be generational.
Yeah.
It could be environmental. It could be a lot of things. But I think it's something that we all need to be retrained in, right? That reaction is not only is it telling like,
I mean, teacher brain, mom brain, I'm like exploding right now.
Right. Like my reaction is not just telling the way that I regulate.
Mm-hmm.
It's also modeling their worth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's, why would you mess with that?
And at some level, it's some of the guiding principles behind ABA therapy, right?
Right.
We are modeling responses. We're modeling that for our kids. If our kids are being dysregulated, right? Maybe we look at ourselves, not because we're angry dysregulated or disruptive dysregulated, but maybe we're dysregulated in our anxiety about something, right?
Maybe somatically, right?
Yeah.
We don't even realize that we are imparting to
Mm-hmm.
them this whole regulation component here. And I know that's an entire different conversation, but it all starts like right there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it sounds like, we want this. Every parent wants like independence and every parent wants success. But it really does start back at the very beginning with these small little steps and remind me again of the three, you mentioned three, it was parenting,
coaching, advising.
Coaching. So parenting is more of like the explicit training, like, hey, this is how you just human. This is how you human, right?
Yeah.
And then you get into the coaching, which is, okay, I'm going to human alongside you kind of thing. And then the advising is what you said?
Yeah, advising. And it's going to be different in neurodivergent kids because of just different developmental.
But it still needs to happen?
It still needs to happen, right? So, for example, in a neurotypical child, right? Parent comes in and they're like, oh, my kid's not doing the homework. What grade are they in? 7th, 8th. Great. I'm like, what do you mean? Just let them fail.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, let them fail. It doesn't count for the GPA, doesn't count for future. Like, what better lesson to learn?
And the pressures of middle school. That kid is
Right?
probably drowning anyway. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So you can afford the cost of the failure
Right.
It's so much cheaper.
Right.
when they're in
I had a parent not too long
elementary,
ago. I had
middle
middle
school.
school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a parent not too long ago come in, and this 16-year-old child had been doing some 90-something and a 45 and gotten this big old ticket, and he might get his license taken away, and we had to get a lawyer. And I'm like, oh, thank God. He looks at me like, what? I'm like, well, I mean, think about all the lessons he gets to learn.
Right.
And it's a no issue. Like, what's the worst thing he could do? Lose his license? He ended up not, because generally they just, like whatever, pay a fine and
But he
slap your
didn't
wrist.
have a child in the car, and he didn't have another life next to him that could have been lost.
Right. He wasn't drunk driving. He wasn't all of these things. He learned some amazing life lessons, including the stress of major failure when legal and judge and all those things are involved, right? He learned all of that at an age where he was under your roof, right? So you could monitor him. You knew he wasn't going to hurt himself. He wasn't going to hurt somebody else. He wasn't going to go crazy. You could be there like, hey, all right, yeah, I'm sorry. Your job at Chick-fil-A is going to have to pay for the legal fees. Okay. Right. But you don't have to pay for your groceries because you're not out on your own. You're here in my house.
So you're still going to eat.
Yes. Right. And so the whole thing is I want kids, I want them to get all their failures, their biggest failures done early. So they get the lessons while they're safely under the umbrella of the parents. Right. And so that's going to look differently with unique abilities. Let's suppose you have a child that is functioning, but not functioning enough to be independent on their own, but maybe they're going to go to a group home. Okay, great. There's a lot of things they need to learn to be able to be successful in the group home environment, right? Yeah. Okay, well, let's let them fail on those things, right? Gloriously, like let them get into fights with their siblings, or let them get into disagreements with other.
Let's catch the pot on fire at home.
Yeah, and so then, that if they blow up or whatever, it's okay.
And don't save them from the natural consequence, because I feel like the learning happens in the natural consequence. And it's hard. It is hard to sit back.
How will they ever develop the coping skill if I keep giving them the coping skill?
Right. And they'll never practice it for themselves. Right. So like watching.
Mom comes in. Mom will fix it. Hold on.
Exactly. And in return, they'll never own the pride of having worked through it on their own. Yeah. Of having
need that.
And as a result, they'll never have the confidence to confidently walk forward. It's like this domino effect that starts all the way back here. And I feel like as parents, God just kind of put inside us, protect. Protect.
Oh, for sure.
Protect. Set them up for success. Protect. Provide. Provide. Protect. Nurture. Provide. But what if provide meant something different? What if provide meant provide opportunities for them to safely fail? Yes. And what if protect meant give them this kind of cocoon where they have the freedom to break down and fully experience their failure without you saving them? So that they know how to do that later. What if the provide and the protect and the nurture looks completely different than what we've made it? And it
mind-blowing.
It shifts everything.
It really is.
It absolutely shifts everything. So what does that mean? What does the parenting, coaching, and then, the guiding, what does the respectful parenting, the building of all of this, what does that mean for a young adult? Like at what point do you just become best friends?
Yeah. I don't know.
Does that happen?
What that is.
Does that?
I have a good relationship with my adult children, right? But at some point in time, they take over their own decisions. And each child's going to be different. I'll give you an example of the 24-year-old son, right? Last year, he had saved up his money. He wanted to get his first brand new car. Well, he wanted to get a new car of his own because the car he had was the car that I had provided for him. And so he was like, I want to get my own car, make it my own. I'm like, I could just sign this over your name. No, it's not the same. Okay, gotcha. So, right, there's a sense of like he wants to stand on his own. Ownership, right? Yeah. So he gets to look and he realizes, he can get this one car, like brand new, is the price of this car used. And like, he gets excited. He's going to get a new car. Great, get a new car, right? Do you need any help? No. You need help with the down payment? Nope. Got it. Okay. So then he's walking through this process, and I would get texted all kinds of hours of the day, like, "What do you think of this car? That's a great car. It's a good car. What do you think of this car? That's a great car."
Seemingly random text,
right?
In like the middle of the night, right?
Right. Yeah. And how does car insurance work? Well, this is how it works, and and he would go out and he would do quotes. He would do all the work himself, right?
Wait, you didn't do that for him?
You
didn't print him out a spreadsheet comparing
that is scary.
All
car
the different
first time alone?
Yeah.
So that is terrifying.
But so think about this, right? So he gets through this whole process and he finds this car at a dealership, new car at a dealership, some hour and a half away from the home that he was sharing with some friends and whatnot. And he's like, okay, that's it. I'm going to go there. And so he walks through all the negotiation online, calls the guy, gets it all, figures out a good price, and he's all good. He sells his car that I'd given so that he could use the money, right? And he coordinates it all wonderful. And he says, can you go to the dealership with me to buy the car? And I'm thinking, in my mind, okay, I got to negotiate. I didn't know he'd done all this stuff. I got to negotiate with him. I got to be there with him. I literally walked to the dealership. This guy, I want to say kid, right? But this guy, my son, had already did all the paperwork remotely, had already sent the deposit, had already secured the funding, had already gotten his loan work already done, his insurance. I walk in there and we take this test drive in the car. And at the end of this, he sits down and he's like, okay. And he signs the couple pieces of paper left to sign. And he's like, okay. And I'm sitting there thinking, why am I here?
Right.
And I was there because I was that last little bit of security that he needed, just my presence standing there.
Yeah.
Right. But I will never have to, I would love to be at a car dealership with him buying new cars. It's fun, but I will never have to be. And he probably will never ask me to be again, because that's what he needed. He just needed that moment to be able to ask questions, get the answers, and have the resource available should he have any last minute questions. I was like, this is amazing. He celebrated his car. He drove off and we were all excited, and I did nothing but stand there.
So in that moment though,
yeah,
in that moment, let's talk about your human experience.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, there is an opportunity there. I'm not saying it happened, but there is an opportunity there for you to feel, well, he no longer needs me.
Right.
Why doesn't he need me anymore? What? But parenting is my purpose. I'm supposed to be doing this. Why?
Well, because when he says he calls, I'm like, oh, good, you need me. I got to go with you. Okay. That's where my brain goes.
Now
I'm saying, oh,
right.
You didn't need me.
Do you still have purpose? Do you still have meaning?
Yeah, I was really excited about the other cars there that I might buy.
Yeah. But, you were already on the next page.
No, but I celebrate it. Maybe it's unique to me, not as many people, I don't know, right? But for me, I can look back, like I've got this digital photo album, brings up old pictures of when they were this age or that age, right? And I love those pictures and I celebrate those pictures, but I've always wanted to celebrate what's next. Like,
you don't want to go back?
No, everybody's asked me
that's rare.
At what age is the perfect age for your kids? I'm like, right now.
Right.
I love this moment right now. And so there's that part of me that always wants that next thing for them, right? That always wants that next piece, that next success. There's a part of me, right, that wants to go back in and say, okay, do this with your career, do that with your career, do this next thing. And
it's never ending.
It wants to be in my brain.
The parenting never stops, right?
Right.
But the mouth has to stop, but the parenting brain.
I want a lot of things.
Right.
But what I got to realize, right, is that my life turned out because I just took whatever steps I took, right? And I want that same for them.
I love that.
They're not going to be successful in life if I keep holding on, right?
He must have felt so empowered driving away in that car.
Oh, yeah. And then he spent all kinds of money customizing it.
So what happens when you have a mom walk into your office and she's saying, but my whole life has been serving them. My whole life has been spent. They don't need me anymore. They don't. And I'd like to say that this is an outlier. I would say this is pretty much 95% of a lot of the parents that I come in contact with. What do you say to them? What do you guide them through to help them with that process?
Well, there's a part of grieving and coming to know that that's not your purpose in life, that that's not what you were made for. We're made for connection. Whether you look at it from a biological lens, a spiritual, relational lens, humanity is built for connection. Right. And this attorney, not the attorney, what do they call the guy? The medical guy. The Surgeon General, that's the guy, had declared last year that loneliness is an epidemic in the U.S. and it's connected to anxiety and depression. Is really creating a health crisis for us. He's really identifying this human need for connection. We have found that connection in our kids, and that's a part of it. But we've kind of lopsided it, right? And we're not serving our kids by keeping that lopsided well. We're not serving them well. We're keeping them bound. One day we're going to be gone, and then where are they going to be, right? We need to be able to promote independence with them, and so that we can get that well done, thou good and faithful servant job on parenting, right? And then be able to move in, how do I find connection in my community? And that's the skill that us adults often have forgotten. It's one of those memes. It's the hardest thing to find friends in your 40s and your 50s. How many times can you walk in? I have people come to my office later in life and they're in dire loneliness and they're like, how do I find friends? I'm like, 7 a.m. Go to any McDonald's. See all the tables of these independent men, independent women, one by one, just drinking their coffee. They may wave to the other, but they're all sitting isolated at the table, waiting to have friends.
Starbucks too.
Starbucks too. All they have to do is get up and go to the next table. And now those two people can start something, but they don't.
So
they
intimidating.
stay right? And the skill is, how do I get out of myself to take the risk? And that's so when us parents are holding to our kids so tightly and that's become our identity, I firmly believe a large part of that is really just a facade of us hiding this idea. We don't know how to make friends anymore.
Right.
That skill is long gone, or maybe it was never developed because we got married super early, or
go ahead.
or whatever reason we've kind of put it dormant and we haven't had to be friends or to make ourselves friendlies, right?
So practice the skill.
Yeah, what's
right.
that Proverbs? Those who want friends have to make themselves friendly, become
right.
friendly. How do we do that? That's a skill. We have to relearn that skill. And if we can commit to ourselves to relearning that skill, it's not that our kids are less attractive to us and we don't want them, but our reliance on them to meet our needs kind of goes down.
Yeah. I look forward to talking further about this in the future. I think that community and finding purpose in community is something that I think we should really dig our heels into. But thank you so much for joining us today.
This was amazing. And as my 20-year-old packs up to move out, I may be booking some sessions with you. Just so you know.
Sounds good.
Yeah. If someone actually does want to reach out to you, we'll post some links below where they can get some information and just kind of look after them. So, okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Right. It was really enlightening. I loved it. I hope.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to Inclusive Insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, and leave us a review.